Today is the second Sunday in the season of creation, and on this day we are encouraged to celebrate our relationship with the land. Jesus himself told many stories about the land, about farmers and seeds and right relationship. And around here in Elmvale, you can't think about land without thinking of farmers and food. During the COVID-19 pandemic, farmers and their families have been designated as essential workers. We need the food they grow, and the world needs the food they grow.
We all need food to survive. And while the world produces enough food for everyone, not everyone has enough to eat. 870 million people still go hungry. Why is there so much hunger in the world? It's a complex issue. Economic disparity, poverty, gender inequality, conflict, and now the changing climate are all factors. And the sheer number of people who are affected by hunger can be overwhelming. The simple fact is that some people enjoy access to an abundance of food while others do not have enough to live healthy and active lives. When starvation occurs, the world responds. But the daily hunger and the people who struggle with it are often forgotten. Thankfully, there are people who are tackling this problem. In different parts of the world and in different circumstances, they are facing hunger and making a difference.
Farmer power is what Sam Langman calls it. The North Simcoe Grain Project began in 2000 and is one of over 100 such growing projects across Canada, working with the Canadian Food Grains Bank to bring an end to world hunger. Here is Sam speaking about this work with some slides from a PowerPoint that he prepared for this year's Elmvale Fall Fair. Now I'm going to introduce Sam Langman, who represents a wonderful group of people called the North Simcoe Grain Project. So over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Meg, and it's an honor for me to tell you about our local growing project. I want to thank Doug Lambie for running the lights and the sound back there. Thanks on short notice he came in, so that's great. So the Canadian Food Grains Bank is a large organization, but in the Elmvale area here, we have what we call a growing project. And back in the year 2000, we started growing crops, and we sell the crops, and the money goes to the Canadian Food Grains Bank, but we'll get to that. So the Canadian Food Grains Bank is a collection of 15 Canadian churches. So in that list of churches, back in 1983, spearheaded by the Mennonite Central Committee, they formed the Canadian Food Grains Bank. And you can see those are the 15 churches that belong to the Food Grains Bank. There's Presbyterians in there, Pentecostals, Lutherans, Catholics, Seventh-day Adventists. Every church, the young church standard joined in 1984. The Presbyterians joined in 1992, and those are all the years they joined. And all those churches have a membership in the bank. And that's exactly what it is, the Food Grains Bank. And each church has its own account in that bank. And I'll explain that a little further later. But right now in the world, there are about 800 million hungry people. And that doesn't just mean starving people. That means people that don't have the right kind of nutrition to grow healthy lives. And so I'm a kind of a math person. I said, well, if every person took 10 inches when they lined up, and that would be 203,000 kilometers long, or 5 times around the world. Can you imagine a lineup of people that are hungry going around the world 5 times? And that's just how many 800 million is. Well, here's a story. In Canada, we have lots of grain. We have the right climate. We've given the privilege of farming here in Canada. And there's all kinds of grain here. There's no hunger here. But the USDA estimates that at the end of 2019, there's going to be 795 million tons of grain in the world left over after we use everything that we want to use. 800 million tons of grain left over. So if there's 800 million hungry people and 800 million metric tons left over, how come? How come there's so many hungry people? And boy, there are hungry people.
We're, I guess, very fortunate to be in this part of the world and farming here. We always take a little time for, just to thank God for the harvest and to think about the starving people around the world, and that field is going to support. Pray about that, and then we get at her and get her done.
God lays lots of things on our hearts to do, but this is definitely something that He's laid on not just my heart, but Randy's and Zane and Brant's, and it's sort of become a passion for us.
Their harvest is going directly onto their table for the most part, and the vast majority of our production gets sold for paying bills and profit and distribution elsewhere. This combine could probably do in the neighborhood of 1,000 bushels an hour if there's a heavy crop there to support it. The blue truck and trailer here, that would give you some perspective. That would be about 1,000 bushels. It's a lot of grain and would feed a lot of families, but
Ukweli ni kwamba kipindi cha nyuma nilikuwa nikipata junia ni bahati sana, yaani napata kama debe 3, debe 4.
Farming in God's way is what the farmers from Tanzania call the conservation agriculture that they have been learning, involving diversity and natural conservation methods. The farming methods being learned by these small farmers in Africa have little to do with the high-tech industrial farming methods that are used by most farmers here in Canada. It is quite remarkable how different it is and much more suitable to their climate and their culture.
Conservation agriculture is an environmentally friendly farming technique that increases yields and helps to retain moisture, enrich the soil, and prevent erosion. Because it uses what nature provides, these farmers call it farming God's way.
4 years ago, it was my first harvest season at St. John's. I went up to Sam after a worship service right around this time of year, and I said, "You're not going to believe this, Sam, but I need to ask you a silly question. What is a combine?" Kindly, he didn't laugh and answered as best he could using words. A few days later, he phoned to invite me to come with him to a cornfield for a ride in the combine so that I could see for myself. Let me tell you, it was the complete opposite to what we just saw in Tanzania. I could see how, despite the large size of the farms around here, they can still call themselves a family farm, with all hands on deck for chores and especially during the harvest season. Like Krista said in the Worshiping Word this week, they sometimes work all through the night.
In the meantime, like on any farm during August, the Osmus family is busy. It's harvest time after all.
Zane's in the combine, Brant's unloading loads, Randy's trucking, so it's pretty busy.
It's the best time of year. You work all season towards this point, and when you actually get to put some grain in the bin and sell some grain, yeah, it's great.
Yes, we want our crops to do well for us, but we want them to do well so that we can just give more and help more people, because we know that we can make a difference in so many different people's lives.
And that we're instructed to make a difference, that we're called to be salt and light to the world. Not just preach to the world, but also to help those in need, and that certainly includes hunger and just basic necessities of life.
Mimi nasema Watanzania wengine wakipata njaa, nataka kusema kuwa njaa inapokabili mahali, ninaona afadhali tu Mungu atuhurumie. Kweli mimi nasema hii ni moja ya changamoto ambayo kwa kweli wakijitoa kwa sehemu yao hata kidogo tu, wakaituma kwa sehemu zozote zile zenye wakulima ambao wana hali mbaya.
To me, it's us sharing the blessing that we've already received. You know, an abundant life, just living in North America, but that doesn't come because we're Canadians, that comes because God's blessed us. And so, you know, we've all been blessed not for ourselves, but to be a blessing to others.
In the Elmvale area, we are fortunate to have both farms and families still working on the land, and an awareness of God's life-giving presence everywhere. It makes a huge and tangible difference to the quality of life in this place.